Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance into this truth bomb riff on behalf of the Clean New Deal. My name is Patrick Lovell. I am the producer with the $71 trillion truth, and I am joined by my colleague, none other than Roseanne Rabiola Mile, the mighty mouse out of Chicago, Illinois, powered with the truth and facts to help salvage the world in disarray. And today, it is our great pleasure to expand the circle of dialogue and just kind of have a one first time meeting, I should say, with a woman by the name of Jen Razik, who is the daughter of Kathy Utley, who we recorded with the other day. And I had just, in the sort of spirit of experimentation, to try to connect with people where they are across the country, and what they're dealing with and what's important to them. We have actually no background on Jen other than that she's Kathy Utley's daughter and that she's interested in criminology. And I just asked if we could maybe record for a minute to see where she's coming from, to see where the dialogue might go, and how we might be able to seemingly fit a glass slipper of the Clean New Deal for those who are interested in the truth. So we'll see where it goes, but it's all in service of building the plane and flying it at the same time. So, Jen, tell us a little about who you are and why you are interested in criminology. And I guess maybe a follow up to that is, what do you consider truth, and is it important to you?
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. So growing up, I grew up in actually Peoria, Illinois, in a predominantly Black and neighborhood. And from myself being white and younger, I noticed there was disparities. And even though I wasn't socioeconomically advantaged, I did have other advantages over the other neighbors or and children in that neighborhood. And so growing up, I've always been really inclined to kind of question the status quo. And I started working in a field in more of like a corporate realm early on. I kind of got hooked into it. And I noticed that there was a lot of just in those entities themselves and these companies, a lot of corruption within those companies and abuses of power. And I felt like a cog after a while. So at the age of 38, I wanted to change my career field. Originally, I went into psychology, which was very helpful, understanding the mind, deviance, and what, kind of follows with that, what type of personalities commit these certain crimes. And then I decided I wanted to go into investigation. So I started going to school for criminal justice and looking into like different criminology and writing papers on, understanding the criminal mind. And what I found was a lack of the forensic psychologist in the criminal justice system lacking an understanding and a profiling of white collar criminals. And it's often labeled, which I find shocking, is nonviolent. And in my opinion, white collar crime is the most violent because, yeah, and I wrote a paper on this actually, and I've been grateful for instructors that have been open to my thoughts. But
Jen, who were your sources? Where did you look to get people to who had written about it?
yeah, so I went on to different like NIH, National Psychological Associations. I found scholarly articles. I went to sources. I always double check and triple check. I've always been the type to, maybe I'm a little neurotic, but even if like my teacher, or even if my employer says, well, this is what it is, I like really go in and do the research to make sure that's the truth behind it. So yeah, a lot of scholarly articles as far as the lack of understanding of the criminal mind behind white collared criminals. And, coming to terms with that and realizing that it's so embedded in our communities, within our systems, within our nation, and globally, that it's a big feat. But I've decided now to dedicate the rest of my life to challenging that and working towards that. And yeah, so As far as, I'm sorry, Patrick, what was one of your other questions? I may have missed one, but that's
Well,
a little bit about me.
before you move forward, I want to just respond to why that was music to my ears across the board. First and foremost, like I've discovered, I'm 57 years old. You never stop learning, first and foremost, as long as
Right,
you're
right.
engaged. And
Yeah,
second of all, you should always have a critical eye, especially on the data. Now,
yeah.
the reason why that's important and where we intersect, and boy, did you lay out the runway perfectly for us to land this plane of the Clean New Deal, and where hopefully you can jump on board and we take off
Yeah.
together. And that in that role, you're a surrogate for hopefully millions of other people that will discover this as we move forward. But as
Hmm.
you move forward in understanding what we're revealing, you'll understand that we have the data that you seek that is even further, to really the triad, the triangle that you're talking about. Now, psychology is a tremendously important aspect of this. So,
Hmm.
when I went down this journey to begin with to get the information that we're going to discuss here shortly, I didn't anticipate that I'd have to understand macroeconomics to the degree that I did. I didn't understand that I would have to really fully wrap my head around all of the regulations and the aspects of law and congressional interest in terms of what's befuddled our country over the course of literally decades. And then you have to cross pollinate that to understand what's happened at universities. And then you have to understand ultimately what the profit motive is. And once you understand that stream, and you see the reality in your face of what's happened in this second
Hmm.
administration of the Trump administration, where
Hmm.
literally the most prestigious universities in our country are
Yeah.
capitulating to the crime, joker in chief is extraordinary. This was unheard of for most of my life, beyond comprehension. But we've seen it with our own eyes, whether it's the tall building law firms, whether it's university, but more importantly, our Supreme Court
Exactly.
are
Yeah.
all working for what you seek, which
Hmm.
is fact-based evidence of how things work to really immure themselves to what you actually had intuited when you were, working and you saw from an early age of unfairness growing up in a neighborhood where you had certain advantages and you laid all of those elements out that touchstone upon really this universality of this insanity of what is the perverse inverse of all things that we're taught to believe we are, i.e., liberty and justice for all, predicated
Hmm.
on what? The Constitution, predicated on the integrity of law. But what do we know? When people become corrupted, the whole thing sinks, the whole thing fails. The entire system is a child's parable, a children's parable. We could go in, like we talked about with your wonderful mother, Kathy, about religious parables, but it's the same thing with a children's parable. I mean, Humpty Dumpty, and of course, the Emperor's New Clothes to come to mind. But to further that and to get Roseanne in on this, because Roseanne was formerly an educator, she comes from Illinois. Roseanne grew up on the mean streets of Chicago by way of the Daily Machine, and she understood literally the hierarchy of the Democratic machine in Chicago that has had, sway since really going back to the 50s, I guess, maybe even before that. And then, of course, when you get into history of Chicago, you know that there's an organized crime element, and you understand bootlegging before all of the other elements that took place. So Illinois, as we have seen and I've been educated by Roseanne is really in Springfield kind of the incubator of politicians that know how to play ball with the machine, right? So to your point, how do you get a job in the hierarchy, right? How do you get a job if you're going along to get along, right? Well, you look the other way, you ignore the evidence, you do all of those things that, as really anybody with common sense would maybe raise an eyebrow too. But the other side of that is when you become a professional, when you become a forensic investigator, what do you rely upon? Data, evidence. And the question is, how do you get that data and evidence if the entirety of the machine that you're working for is designed to prevent you from getting that data and evidence? Well, you got to be a certain kind of person with the tenacity and a sort of description for truth in your own DNA. And so, one thing I want to just kind of finish up on here, and I want to get your comments, Roseanne, based on what we've heard so far. Um, Roseanne and I attended the No Kings rally in Salt Lake City, where I live, back in the first one in April, I believe. And there was this young woman who got up and who was assigned a speaker's role, who was, I think, in her 20s. And she got up there in this philosophical bent where she was trying to express, look, there is no truth, that it's all subjective, that we all have to find our own truth and qualify it. So therefore, nobody can really truly understand all, but at the same time, we have to fight against, the master class, so to speak. I think that was really kind of her intuition. And it's funny because she has no idea that our entire legal system is predicated on the truth. How do you resolve the truth? Well, you do investigations, you get evidence, and then you get indictments, you go into court of law. And then if you have all of the elements that are within the degrees of whatever that particular, indictment is, be it criminal or civil, you have to have the narrative, but with all of the information to be able to create the truth of what that story implies. So, was there a murder? Okay, well, you have to have evidence, the gun, or the weapon, maybe the fingerprints, maybe an email that suggests what the motive was, and so on and so forth. That gives you mens rea. We have answers to all of that, and so there's millions of young people around the country who are so lost in translation because they buy lies every single day, all day, because they're manipulated by an algorithm that is destroying people's critical ability to do exactly what you've dedicated your life to. So on that note, I want to toss it to you, Roseanne, and get some of your thoughts, and then we'll turn it back to Jen to further the conversation.
Jen, I'm so happy to see you. And when I look at you, I see a 30 something. Okay. I work with tons, and I call everybody a kid. Okay. I'm s- I'm 76 years old. All right. So I work with mostly 20 and 30-year olds. And they seem lost in their own space. And I don't understand why they're not open to what you in your 40s are continually being open to. And I've worked with a particular group for the last 5 years. In fact, until I came there with the young people, they didn't even provide meals for all these people out in the street. They were giving them hygiene products and tents and stuff, and that's fine. There's not a problem with that. But I just left the organization because of bureaucracy, too many people talking and not doing, too much too much checking off the boxes, and too much putting band-aids on solutions when we can go to the top and look at the psychology, look at the caring, look at people's heart and their mind and their soul. And can you not understand good from bad? Can you not understand 1 + 1 = 2? How how does that, how can you not see that? And it seems to me when you can see that, when you can see the big picture, like I see you looking at the big picture, then you can, you just automatically open your mind to the education, which is always the first thing. Do they hate school and learning so much? They're listening to people who have big audiences and Jimmy Kimmel and whoever else, they're listening to all that. But why can't they focus? What's your what's your take on why the lack of focus? And I understand about the algorithms. I get that stuff. It wasn't like that when I was marching in the streets in the 60s. But why this lack of focus to get to the heart of the matter? What do you think that's all about?
Yeah, I'm so excited too, Roseanne, to speak to you after I watched the video when you guys were speaking to my mom. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. Um, so I think there's a multitude of things through generation after generation. I don't know if you guys are read manufacturing consent, but I think a lot of it has to do with the way our government and states have, in a way, systematically oppressed our voices. And with especially, I was just reading a really interesting article, which I'll send to you guys. But it was about citizenship and how citizenship and that feeling of citizenship is a social construct. And in order for it to be effective, we have to all participate in that. And one of the biggest takeaways for me was when I was reading this is that the citizenship is challenged in our democracy or in any democracy if this one thing is missing, and that is the enlightened voter. And so those who are not enlightened, where they're on a daily basis struggling to make basic needs, and this could be the children, this could be some of the students that you've encountered or their parents, for example, and they're coming from places of daily struggles. And so to wrap their mind around something that may not seem important to them at the time, it doesn't become a focus point. And if we're not able to engage in our society with an enlightened mind and an understanding of what we're fighting for, then we don't fight. We become complacent. And I've seen that not just with young people, but with older individuals, more mature individuals, people my age, who are just like, well, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm not going to vote. Nothing ever happens. Well, right. And it's kind of become structuralized like that. And a lot of the orders and the policies and the different laws and legislatures that are coming out are meant to oppress and make it harder for people to be enlightened in their daily life, to be educated in their daily life. And then that creates almost a jail, a prison of the mind. So that's kind of what my thinking is on that one.
I want to respond to that, and then I want to ask you a couple of questions because again, this is so incredibly refreshing for me because the way I communicate that reality is that we live in the four walls of our universe, right? Our daily structure. It doesn't matter what age you are. Everybody's got to deal with the same 24-hour cycle, however many hours of daylight you have in your life, and what you do in those 24 hours is what constitutes what your reality is. But the enlightened mind, you're absolutely right, is when you lose the notion of critical thought, when you're not activated in your mind because you're not someone who realizes the scope of history, let alone the 248 years of the American history and everything that had to happen to create what gives people the opportunity, or I should say, the freedom to not choose, so to speak, then what we're all now seeing, and I say this frequently, that we've been on this circuit now for some time trying to get people to see the forest for the trees, which is the corruption that we're going to get into here in a moment. But what nobody can see based on that dance that you're talking about, and then they give up. See, Donald Trump in the second administration in this past year, really the 9 months since he's been in office since January, right? He's shoving this giant shit sandwich like waterboarding torture into everyone's face to where no one can ignore this. They're all getting blown up, okay? And hundreds of thousands of people have already died because of U.S. aid being, kneecapped, and there's more to die, and there's more coming. And then, of course, the insanity of the contradictions. It's not even a contradiction. It's just straight up hypocrisy based on complicity and conformity to an enormity of a deformation of this freaking idiot president that has idiot sycophants around him that are basically and literally protecting pedophilia for the elites while at the same time saying we're going to go wage a war on narco-terrorism that's killing everybody while freeing narco-terrorists, right? I mean, these sorts of things are forcing Americans. And I saw a speech yesterday by Senator Mark Kelly, who just gave a speech, and I had to watch it in its entirety, not the clips that were coming through all of the social media and everybody's takeaway and what they wanted us to hear their take on. I had to listen to Mark Kelly in its entirety. And what he did is, this guy is a former, like Top Gun in the Navy for 25 plus years. He's in NASA. I know who those guys are. They're incredibly skilled at details. You don't get to that level of just being the top of the line of engineers and aeronautical engineers and flight, commanders and that sort of thing, unless you have a computer mind. I mean, you have to be literally next level genius to be able to do the types of things that Mark Kelly has to do in his career. And then he becomes a sitting senator. But then he has to give this speech to the press that was basically written for fourth grade comprehension about character. And I guarantee, one, very few, maybe 0.001% of the population is going to see that in its entirety. Half of the population is not going to understand it's a referendum on character, which, to your point about citizenship and enlightenment and just the good nature of justice and integrity and empathy and the types of things that we as a society have to function to help everybody else live their best versions of themselves. That's not what we're doing. Our society is just the opposite. It's built on elites that will literally predate on teenagers while at the same time stealing from millions of people, while at the same time stealing billions of dollars, and nobody's going to stop them. So there are people out there literally who have their heads in the sand with their backside up. And what do they think is going to happen? That they're not going to be plowed in the backside over and over and over until they can't breathe. The fact of the matter is, when you let corruption run amok, it obviously leads to the fascism, and it leads to this patriarchy. It leads to all of these things that will destroy the liberty of minorities, that will destroy the liberty of women, that will destroy the dynamics and the freedom of all these potentialities to live an enlightened, invigorated life where they can live the best versions of themselves. So we understand that as a basic sort of primer. That's just the ground floor of perspective, right? If you want to create a society that enables people to live the best versions of themselves, what do you personally think is the first thing that has to be addressed that will enable that a society of thriving to happen, for example? What's the first thing?
For at least what I think is corruption. Yeah, it has to end, because without that over looming doom, it's hard for anything else to ever grow, with the oppression constantly hanging over, and also the restricting access to resources. That's inevitably what happens, and it destroys neighborhoods that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. Minorities typically are the ones who are targeted. So yeah, absolutely, and that's the big picture. So I was kind of walking my way through it.
Let me ask you a follow up then. Okay, so and I'd like to hear how you pronounce this, because I always say this. I've got my own way of saying it, but I'm curious how you frame it. So again, especially to minorities, what is your message?
For myself, um, my message is, don't lose hope. That's what they want to do. That's how they will win. We have to, as a community, mobilize and to come together and not to allow them to divide us, because we are all the same. We all want the same things. What do we want in life? We want happiness. We want love. We want our children to be safe. We want food. We want basic housing that's safe. We all want the same things in life. And so let's not allow those above to divide us based off of insignificant things that are basically will allow us to destroy us from within.
So your baseline, and I agree with this, and this is what we say all the time as well. Security is a huge component of that.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare, opportunity, integrity of the law, all of those types of things. And if you have a system that has integrity, that is about equality and sustainability and liberty and justice for all, the way that you achieve that is, of course, by making sure you destroy the tumor of corruption.
Mm-hmm.
That's tyranny. It always has been tyranny. It has been tyranny for thousands of years. There's
Mm-hmm.
different variations of how this whole thing works. But you have to be able to, A, open up the blinds of your own mind. You have to become invigorated and enlightened, and you have to become dynamic, and you have to become someone that finds a path forward with others to the tune of millions when you become empowered, because that is the only way to overcome the misery of tyranny. And I'll add, with what our platform is, when you understand everything that we're laying out, that enables the renaissance of possibility, because it's absurd what we are living through. And I'm going to give you two pieces of the puzzle, and then I'm going to let you interact with Roseanne, but I want you to kind of take it forward, because let's put it this way. If your objective is to find a pathway to criminology in a very meaningful way, where you can actually have an impact on society, where you can become a vector of protection against these forces of corruption, well, you've come to the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been on a journey that's taken millions of dollars to put together, that's taken tens of thousands of hours, where I've crisscrossed this country more times than I can count, probably 12 times in and out of it. That's taken over 14 years. I began this side of the journey after the 2008 great financial crisis, where my first documentary was basically writing the Occupy Wall Street movement, where it became prologue to everything that came since. And what I discovered on that journey, because I had studied political science and journalism in college, and my career path led me into production. And I'd been at the highest levels of production for the studio system, and then I went independent. It's a long story, but I've seen how things work, especially as an independent entrepreneur, where I have to raise funds a lot of times for my own projects. So I understand all of these elements that go into the law and economics and everything else. But the way that fits into the journey of where you're on in your life pattern is that you're looking around to yourself, and this is how I started my journey, where it's like, okay, my life just got turned upside down. Nothing makes sense. So I got to start pulling on the threads of discovery to try to sort out what is versus what everyone is telling me in my media feeds that are taking me 1,000 different directions. Over the course of 14 years, that journey led me to not only the top legal minds in the country that were working as regulators, so that means they're criminologists, that
Mm-hmm.
do this on behalf of the institutions that are created to prevent the world that we live in. And that includes the Department of Justice,
Mm-hmm.
that includes the Securities and Exchange Commission, that includes the Federal Bureau of Investigations, that includes the AGs, the attorneys general around the United States, and a whole, let's say, alphabet soup of regulatory bodies that encompass roughly a $90 billion a year apparatus with tens of thousands of employees that have laws and expertise to prevent what we have become. So the question that I have for you, since you've been around the block and you have a critical thinking, what's the first reaction to that sentiment? How is that possible?
Um, yeah. So, I was looking at, because I'm still trying to find my place. I mean, I know what I stand for, right? I know what I don't stand for. Um, I'm still trying put my place too. So I was looking up white collar investigative jobs, and I was like, oh, FBI, Department of Justice. Like right now, I don't even know if I trust some of those entities, honestly.
They're corrupt.
Yes,
That's the
and I'm
answer.
like,
So
also,
just really quick though, before you, because the question I asked you was, how is that possible? The answer is because they're corrupt. Now the
right.
question is, how did they get corrupt? And if they're corrupt now, does that mean they're going to be corrupt later if we can germinate and manifest a national movement of tens of millions of people that say, hell no, not now, not ever. Now, just again, a couple of lessons in history, not a lecture, but first of all, what led to the trust busting movement was everything we're in the midst of right now. And that was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. We had After the Civil War, there was a civil rights movement, there was an environmental movement, there was a
Hmm.
women's suffrage movement, there was an equality movement, there was a labor movement. All of those things manifested into what became trust busting to break up monopolies. That's first and foremost. Then we had
Hmm.
another 20 years of those progressive movements and fights and socialists and all sorts of other elements that ended up in the streets because of post World War One into the roaring 20s, but ultimately the Great Depression. So all of these things have happened before, and it ultimately rolled into the New Deal. The New Deal was government holding
Hmm.
power to account and working for the people that created these institutions that we're talking about. So if the institutions get infiltrated with corrupt actors and corruption, how is it possible? Because we've created loopholes for big money to be able to work with the technocrats to be able to develop a system for billionaires so that they would choke the notion of liberty and justice for all. So if you don't have the information, can you defeat the guys that are controlling it?
So I think one of the biggest things, and I think about that because I'm thinking, well, okay, how do these billionaires get their hands on anybody? It's through elections. We have to get money out of elections, period. Like no money. There has to be a cap on what's allowed. The money should come from through a taxpayer situation, like a taxpayer like trust, and where each individual person who's running gets that amount of money. We have democracy, but yet we're really fighting during our elections and how we're approving people and their positions through a system that's all about capitalism, who can raise the most money. Well, how do people get that money? Through super PACs. That's how they're infiltrated. And then we have, the lobbyists that are, whispering in ears and needing favors for, campaign donations. And
That's interesting. You call that capitalism. I call that corruption. So
yeah,
tell me what capitalism.
capitalism is corruption,
Tell me what
in my opinion.
capitalism is. Tell me what capitalism is.
I personally believe capitalism is a system that breeds corruption because there's no ceiling to the amount of money that's needed.
So
It's the balloon.
you've reinterpreted the notion of capitalism based on your experience. See, that's
Hmm.
not the definition of capitalism. Capitalism is the mode of production and distribution by private ownership for profit. It's that
Hmm.
simple, okay?
Hmm.
But then we have laws, and we've had a whole history of laws to prevent what you just said. So then what is it? Well, that's corruption. So it's not
Hmm.
capitalism. Now, do we have democracy? It's predatory capitalism if you want to keep capitalism in there, but that's another
Hmm.
story. Are we a democracy?
I don't believe so.
No,
No.
democracy is one person, one vote, and it's
Mm.
everybody's equal in that process. Is that
We
what
don't
we?
have that. Yeah, we don't have that because of the electoral college.
So let me ask you. Well, that's part of it. So let me ask you a question then. Do you think that you'd like democracy, or do you see a different system that you prefer?
Um, I keep clicking and it keeps clicking back on. Yeah, I believe in more of a socialist democracy where there's more programs that we are all more equal
Okay, fine.
versus,
That's fine. You're
yeah,
a
yeah,
social democracy, so that's fine. But democracy to a degree, but freedom, liberty, you want input, but at the same time, you want the system to serve people, and there's ways to do that through budgeting techniques and everything else.
not
Great.
corporations. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I say is that we don't have a capitalist system. We don't have a democracy. We have a corporate fascist system, and that's redundant for a reason. But we have a corporate fascist system that is undergirded by a criminal syndicate, which is our financial system. You call it capitalism. Capital is the flow, but the methodology is racketeering. There is your criminal and your criminology input, which isn't supposed to happen, but it does because of corruption. So it's a corporate fascist system undergirded by a criminal syndicate that, here's the key, that over the course of the last 14 years, and this is the first time this has ever happened in history. Now, there's different variations of kind of how the power has orchestrated itself. We could go into the gold era, gold age, and aristocracies, and yada yada yada. But in this particular age of what our system is, this has never happened before in history. We have the full faith and credit of the United States that floated a global crime syndicate illegally that created this monstrous mafiocracy. Okay, that's what it is. It's a crime syndicate. It's a cabal of criminals that is now fueling fascism. So, how do these three stools work in history? So, the way they work is that you have typically in the United States, and this happened in Europe and Germany, especially in Italy, and that sort of thing, but you have the patriarchy first and foremost, that's based in kind of the religiosity of the hierarchy of the family. But then you have the corporate scenario, right? A corporate fascist state. But then you create a nationalism of we're better than them, right? So that's white supremacy. So that's the triad of what we're in the midst of right now, right? That's what MAGA is. That's what these guys have created. How did they create it? Because of Fred Koch and his really evolution from what was known as, are you familiar with the John Birch Society? Do you know who that is? Okay. So that started in the 50s, right? That's pretty much white supremacy married to big oil. Fred Koch was the father of both Charles Koch, and I think I can't remember the other Koch brother's name, but long and the short of it is Fred Koch made all of his money actually building the infrastructure for Stalin's Russian oil infrastructure. He made gobsmacking money, came back as a libertarian. They created the Heritage Foundation over the course of years. They created think tanks. They created, this universality of this causation of what you're talking about, which then created Project 2025. So that's all the stasis of what we're talking about. Okay. So I'm just going to leave that there for a moment because I want to turn it over to Roseanne to introduce the Clean New Deal and see how this aligns with what Jenny is talking about. Is that okay with you, Jenny? Okay, perfect. Do you want me to pull it up on my screen or do you want to just go off of memory?
No, put it on the screen. It looks better.
Yeah.
But while you're doing that, you said a word that we can't dismiss. You used the word hope. Okay. Now, without knowing what other people much more educated and professional than I have said, you don't have to hope to persevere. So I don't think about processes and systems to the degree that Patrick does. Because at 10 years old, I was asking, how come all the newspapers got the same headline? I always in the 50s and 60s and going forward had a real distrust of the establishment. So for me, it was not about hope. I wanted to be the mayor of the city of Chicago. I didn't hope to be that. I focused on what can I do to go around, under, over, through, in between the establishment. So it's not necessary to hope in order to persevere. I didn't think about hope. And I told Patrick a few days ago, I said, oh God, now I'm going to forget it. Oh, I know what I said. I told him I wanted to be mayor. Well, he knew I wanted to be mayor of Chicago. But guess what I got? Guess what I found 5 years ago with his work, The Con? I found something better because I don't have to go over, around, under, through, in between, or anything. All I have to do is be impactful, engaging, crazy as I am, swearing when I do, which is usually a lot. I'm being calm today. But all I have to do is hit the sweet spot in different people with where they are at. I don't care where they're at. I don't care. I don't care about isms because they all fail, they all die, they all kill people because we're all imperfect and we're never gonna be perfect and there ain't no frickin' paradise here. I don't know where it's at, if it exists. I don't care. I know we can make things better. And I don't frickin' hope about it. I just keep persevering. Okay? That's all. I don't care about the isms. Yeah, I will say I was a capitalist. I owned a couple of businesses. And what I hear explained by people who are very into socialism, hey, that's fine. But you know what? I was a capitalist. I did not treat any of my employees that way. Never, never. When it came time and we had money with our company, which I kept afloat by going to three different credit card companies, okay, I wanted to give them health insurance and vacations and bonuses and all that. And we kept doing that day
Let
after
me let
day.
me add something to that though. This is important for people to hear, understand in terms of Roseanne. Yeah, okay. She's an entrepreneur. They had a collection business, and that what she did in addition to many other things. She worked as in law offices in Chicago. She worked for banks. She also ended up in city council. But what her spirit took her was she was in the streets for years and maybe decades, helping people who had fallen on hard times, particularly the homeless, particularly the people who required food. Roseanne has literally been there, done that. For anybody kind of going, yeah, I'm going to kind of hold her to, kind of what do we say, oh, the term eludes me at the moment, but she's really done more in a socialist construct than anybody I've ever personally met. Okay. And I'm not a socialist. I'm not against socialism. I'm against authoritarianism. I know friends of mine that own breweries in Oregon that are socialists. Anybody can go be a socialist. Go buy and do what you got to do to get your own vineyard or whatever, and you set it all up. But the thing that we have to understand from where I'm coming from in this whole thing is that we live in 2025. We've been around for a long time. The communist revolution happened in 14, and we knew who Marx was. I know what didn't happen with Stalin. We could go on and on about everybody's flaws, right? We have to understand this is a huge country that has a safety net when you need a safety net. It has opportunity for people who want to find opportunity, and it has the free market for those who are going to take the risk to invest and yada, yada, yada. What we're telling you is we have socialism, and this is for the broader audience. We have socialism right now. It's socialism for the billionaire criminals. What we're going to lay out is we're giving tens of trillions of dollars illegally while we're all stuck in all of these other horror things and the flood the zone and Doge and this and that. And Epstein's a big piece of this, at least as an entry point. But at the end, you got to understand he's still the tip of the iceberg. Okay. And so when we're coming at this, we're not coming from, again, this is, people accuse Bernie Sanders and all of these others of like the perfection test or something like that. And I kind of do that to Bernie too, because Bernie has all the information I do. And Bernie's situation comes up where he's like, you know what? We got to make this country about everybody, including the billionaires. No, I'm saying we got to arrest the criminal billionaires. We got to take their freaking money back. And we have to understand how they did, what they got away with, how they own the system, how they betrayed the system, how they think all of us are, expendable. And we're going to make them expendable. We're going to turn the tables. So all of you folks who like manifestos and everything else, this has got plenty for you. But this is in the service of really, quite frankly, democracy. And the way we do that is because, like Winston Churchill said, whether you like Winston Churchill or not, democracy is the best of all of the worst possibilities. Humans are flawed. We will always be flawed. The perfection test is something that we all have to consider in the spectrum of what we're now going to unveil, because again, it's what we do and how we treat our fellow human beings. And where I'm coming from is, if you don't have the law, if you don't have integrity, if you don't have the democracy that creates the law based on a community's needs, which are going to be different in the suburbs of Chicago with the urban area of Los Angeles, which is going to be different from the state, counties, and whatever else in Austin. All of those things have to come together based on where those geographical scenarios are, but in service to liberty and justice for all, predicated on the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and 248 years of history in order to form a more perfect union, for better or for worse. So back to you, Roseanne. Well, actually, I want to give you a moment to respond to that first, and tell me how you're sort of interpreting what it is that I'm laying out, and then ultimately, I want to see Roseanne walk us through the precepts predicated on the 4 questions.
For me, right? Yeah. So, yeah, no, that's what I firmly have seen as far as corruption goes. You know, this is my way of thinking of things, but I feel like capitalism is kind of like the gateway drug to corruption in a way. I think there's some things about it, not all wrong, but there's some things about it that create a desire, a need for greed. But then on top of it, like you were saying with the billionaires and the corrupt billionaires, how does someone make that kind of money without first, exploiting people or exploiting resources or exploiting, the tax evasion, et cetera, without maintaining that much wealth and hoarding that much wealth? And so I personally believe that there shouldn't be any type of a person that has that much money to begin with. And then
I
also
agree.
too, yeah, also too, the way our government has set up, basically, especially with this new big crappy bill, where they want to call it, um big piece of shit bill. um the lowest earning individuals will be bringing home a net negative of, I think it's around $1,300, where those who are the wealthiest that don't need it will be bringing in an extra 88 to 89,000 dollars. The people who are undocumented individuals who are working and still paying into safety nets and like Social Security, et cetera, are being they are being taxed 26.1% of their income. It's about 9,000, almost 8,800 and something a year, while individuals like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are and Warren Buffett are paying anywhere from 1 to less than a percentage of their income in taxes
So,
federally.
but well, how they did that was they bought the guys who write the laws, and they do that
Right.
because of all of these things that we're going to address. But further to that, and this took me years after I graduated from college and lived and worked as a professional for several decades before the world came crashing down and I had to unpack all of this stuff, where I went to go, as a documentary film producer, talk to, really the most expert minds, particularly as it relates to the law, the nature of what we call control fraud. And this is
Mm-hmm.
psychology 101, but it's fiefdoms based on this process. And we're not going to, litigate that here, because these are things that as you come in on board, you'll have access to and you can learn more about. But the long and the short of it is, everybody knows that the system is rigged. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows that the CEOs are in control. Everybody knows
Yeah.
that the billionaires are the problem, but they don't know who did what, when, and how, and what they got away with, why they got away with it, and what exactly they got away with, and how the system works, which you have to unpack in the blueprint to be able to get to the enlightenment that you're talking about. And therein lies the trick of this whole thing, right? Because we have the power. We collectively have the power. The people have the power. Now, which direction is it going to go? Is it going to go, okay, let's just talk about socialism for a second. Zoran Mondani just won New York City based on the affordability crisis, right? And the key components of his so-called socialism that the billionaires were freaking out about in New York, that were putting millions of dollars into trying to destroy his credibility and everything else. And he's a young guy. And he came up because of a network of a system. I haven't done the analysis on it, but trust me, I don't think he came out of nowhere. But at the same time, what is exactly he's culminating in this process? They're gonna have in New York City. They're gonna have, I believe, city-run grocery stores. They're gonna make uh, transportation available for the working class. They're going to have childcare opportunities for the working class. And then they're going to create, to some degree, which is going to be very difficult, I can assure you, but networks of, what do we call it? Rent control sort of thing, right? And that's not going to be easy in New York City, just so you know, because they really are run by the financial class, right? So, all that being equal, that is not even remotely close to a national paradigm that is dealing with what it is that we're going to reveal to you right now. Okay. And we want to get your feedback on this, because this is scaffolding. And again, what we're proposing to everybody that's out there, we don't all have to be in the same exact silo. We don't all have to walk to the same tune. We can all have separate issues, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's systemic scenarios in prisons, or whether it's how state-run legislatures handle education. Those are things that all have to work themselves out. But this is the paradigm of which this movement has to reboot this system that, quite frankly, created Project 2025 and created this billionaire hostile takeover of the United States that is literally, when you understand all of the elements, is as nakedly corrupt as the stuff that we're seeing from Donald Trump right now. Let's not lose sight of the fact that he's got a carrier group in Venezuela, off the coast of Venezuela, blowing fishing boats out of the water because they're supposedly running cocaine, which nobody has evidence of and Congress hasn't mandated. But at the same time, this guy says it's because it's a war on drugs, when he just let out the former president of Honduras, who flooded America with 400 tons of cocaine and worked, and we know this because of the evidence of the trial and everything else, worked with the cartels, and he got convicted of 45 years. This is how insane the corruption is right now. If people can't get a hold of that corruption and that twisted reality at the very basics, how in the hell are we going to even get to some of the things that we want to have happen in a fair way? So that's our position. So, Roseanne, I'm going to go back to my share screen. Please let me know if you can see it, and please walk us through it.
Okay, I'm looking at our homepage, the Clean New Deal, which caught somebody on Blue Sky very right between the eyes. She saw a declaration to reboot the American dream. That got her, all right? Different facets attract and just turn on the light for different people. We can talk about the American dream. We can tell people we don't live
Wait
in.
a second. Let's just say this, though. You don't believe in the American dream. You never have.
Correct. I never even went window shopping because I never thought I would have the money to go buy this stuff in the window. So what the hell am I wasting my time window shopping for? Okay. So to me, I have a dream for the world. I want them to not burn up. I want them to have water and food and be able to use their talents to support themselves, their family, and the rest of the people around which they live. Okay. No matter, see, I see it as corruption's at the top, no matter what system you have. What's frickin' Vladimir Putin? He's
He's not a
sure,
communist, although he is the
okay.
Politburo, and
But
therein lies the problem with isms.
okay, look at all these different countries. It doesn't matter what, it's not the ism. The ism is after you got to stop the corruption, and then you can do for people, and the people have to rise up, because you don't get a flower, you don't get the bloom first. You get us. You get the seeds first.
Dan, can I ask you a quick question? Do you need to go? Are we going past your time or? Okay. All right. We'll try to hurry this up because I got to get going here pretty soon.
Okay.
But no. Just for the record there, because I know a lot of people roll their eyes when they see the American dream. Look, my message to all of you who know it all and who've been beat down and who hate the system and you think you've got all the answers and you know you got to take down the man. Okay, good luck. We need millions of people to come around the facts that interpreting the American dream. For me, I've got the same American dream Martin Luther King had. I've got the same American dream that I think maybe early versions of Thomas Jefferson before the slavery problems and yada, 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 and three-fifths statutes. Look, we can't live in this perfection bubble, but the American dream is the law. The American dream is equality. The American dream is that we, in order to form a more perfect union, can sort out the problems we're dealing with, because all life has ever been is problem solving from the very beginning. That's it. So we solve problems. And in my philosophy is that there's two, columns of our soul. You've got the creative side, which is all about integrity, beauty and sustainability and liberty and that sort of thing, but mostly predicated on integrity. But you also have the worst side, which is the self-destructive side, right? The yin and the yang, the darkness, the force, which is hypocrisy, duplicity, complicity, right? That's what conformity depends on for authoritarianism. So these are in constant battle with one another, and we have to recognize that. But when I'm talking about the American dream, it's plugging ourselves into the dynamism of the spirit of innovation and character and hope, but also empathy that we're in this together, right? I loved right when Trump started attacking everybody that were anti-fascist as terrorists. And everybody was like, are you freaking kidding me? My grandfather was a GI fighting the freaking Nazis. We were all anti-fascist, you idiot, right? So if you can accept that, what we're talking about is Martin Luther King's speech that I have a dream, okay? This is the next version of that. So please, Roseanne, rip us through the 4 questions and then ultimately the precepts. And I'm going to go ahead and just pick that up right now.
Go ahead. And if you look at the first thing, what we have, click on what's qualified immunity so it pops out, Patrick. Okay, what is qualified immunity? It's the legal doctrine, the law in the United States. It protects government officials, including law enforcement officers, and now frickin' ice that will melt. It will melt. I don't have to hope for that, because that's going to happen. It's going to melt. And they're not, because you have qualified immunity, they're not held personally liable for constitutional violations, such as excessive force. They can't go around kidnapping
Murder.
people.
They can shoot people and get away with it.
Kill. You can't do it. Okay. And that's our first question.
Okay, so just really quickly on that, because you got to understand, people, the reason we have qualified immunity is because the legal profession figured out ways that counties and cities don't go bankrupt paying out, settlements to people that the cops shot. And so the cops get away with shooting, running black youth away from a situation that they're scared of the cops. And they can, so if a cop is corrupt and he can plant drugs on you and he can murder you, what is that? That's fascism. That's not the United States. So we've got to crush qualified immunity. Cops have got to be held accountable. Now, I'm personally saying, for the record, for everybody watching this, I don't say that cops shouldn't be able to shoot people. They should have shot people on January 6th at the Capitol. That didn't happen because of corruption. So please go forward with judicial immunity.
The second one is the judicial immunity. Look, we know what we've got going, okay? And what is it about? It's because we've got these corrupt people, these corrupt, I don't even want to call them people. You got the justices, they don't care. They're just caring about themselves. They don't care.
It's the
They're
corrupt justices of the Supreme Court that have taken backdoor scenarios to be able to destroy Dobbs, to destroy, to create, they etch a sketched the 14th Amendment, Section 3, that destroyed the entire purpose of the Civil War to grant the president immunity.
you know,
The
give
fuck?
me a
Seriously, it's like that is the most grotesque betrayal of the United States in history. Sorry to bring the level up a couple of volumes here, but come on, let's deliver this, my friend Roseanne, because people have got to get through the four walls of their existence the reality of what we're looking at. Please continue.
So because we have the judicial immunity, what's the presidential immunity? Okay. Protection from crimes while he's in office? What kind of law is that? That is BS. That is not, it's wrong. It's wrong. Everybody knows it. And just keep going along to get along.
Okay,
What's
let me pick up there too, and I'm sorry, but is it wrong? Is it wrong for a priest to tell the flock to believe in God, especially go to heaven, and then rape the flock? Is that
Right.
wrong, or is that disgusting?
Yeah.
So
And
the
it's
Supreme
still
Court
going on.
raping the American people has got to end. We need millions of people to understand the problem is the Supreme Court above all else right now.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. And they shouldn't have lifetime terms. Just saying.
Of course not. And they should
Yeah.
be like, so Roseanne says all the time that we have to have ethics, a canon of ethics. And she's absolutely right. And she's, but they've got to be held absolutely accountable for corruption. So, but therein lies, to your point about what we've been talking about from the outset, right? When you're a criminologist, you have to understand motive, you have to understand psychology, you have to understand evidence, you have to be able to get the investigation. Who is investigating the Supreme Court?
Nobody.
Who's investigating the Supreme Court? I will tell you who's investigating the Supreme Court. People we work with called ProPublica. They're the ones who brought us.
Yes.
That's who we work with, among others. Okay. So the fact is, what America, and I'm raising my voice to shatter your illusions of understanding why you got to hypnotize yourself on corruption. Because the tumor of what people do, people are, like I said, you either have integrity or you're either some sort of tyrant of lies. That's it. And if you lie, you can freaking rape people, and that's what they're doing to us. But we haven't even touched the surface of what the information we have. But the bottom line is these are the basics. But I hope that's starting to really resonate with you, Jen, because you're a surrogate, I hope, to millions of people that are in your same boat who have these questions, because we can't softball this approach. You can't go, well, let's kindly kind of think about these people, because the only thing that's going to save us now is either this or a revolution. And I honestly don't think millions of Americans have it in them. I don't think millions of Americans can even come close to being able to push over the only ones that do are those in the military right now that are not capitulating to this corruption. But again, I'm so sorry to talk over you, Roseanne, but I want you to just bring this home, because we don't have these opportunities all the time. We need to bring this home to the people that are trying to get their head around it.
Of course we do. And look, that's Patrick. I always tell him, be Patrick. I always know myself. I'm Roseanne. Okay. So you put it together and you've got lots of people that you can bring in. Okay. Let's talk about the Electoral College. Why that? See, to me, the Electoral College negates one person, one vote. It totally negates it because the people in Wyoming, Montana, or wherever that are little teeny states, but those electors are what? As we
Mhm.
used to say in Chicago, you get the white envelope, the white with the filled with the money, okay?
Mhm.
So they can do more or just as much as California or Illinois or New York. That's bullshit. Okay.
Right.
You
Mhm.
you can't do it that way. It's got to stop. So those are the first four
Wait a second.
questions.
What else did Donald Trump do with the Electoral College in the 2020 election, Roseanne?
Look, Georgia just got blown away. He's got fraud all over. He buys it. That's all
Okay,
it's
let me just add in a couple of pieces that are important. There was a racketeering, there was a RICO indictment in Fonnie Willis's Fulton County, Georgia, during the Biden administration that never came to fruition because of a lot of, let's just say, illegal fumbling the ball, so to speak. But what that case was about was Donald Trump stealing X amount of votes, first and foremost. There was a whole hierarchy and a conspiracy. Now, in addition to that, they had the elector certifier, the certifiers for the electors is what they're called in the swing states where they used documentation fraud. They made up the names on the electors to steal the electoral college. In addition to all this other perversity, that was in 2020. And as it turns out, that actually happened back in the 50s as well, that I learned about a year ago. So the electoral college is just a perversion, just like, all the other perversions. It's the perversion of the minority, right?
Mhm.
It's the perversion of those who have power that can basically gerrymander, do X amount of different tricks to basically steal elections and thwart the will of the majority. And who were the majority? Not
Mhm.
the billionaire class,
No.
right? Okay.
Right.
and when you can't win, cheat. Okay. And if nobody's going to stop you, cheat some more and lie some more.
That's right.
And because we have given the cheaters an endless supply of money and a get out of jail free card, it ain't going to stop. We got to stop the corruption.
Jen, do you have
That's
any
the
questions at this
ticket.
stage?
No, I don't. No, I agree actually. All of these are
They're common
exactly
sense,
why.
right? Okay, so
Yeah,
look,
it's common sense, but you know,
go ahead. Because see, we look at it like I'm an 80s guy, right? Everybody's watching Stranger Things right now. I'd be like on the good guys trying to take down Vecna, right? You figure out the paradigm and you figure when you put the whole deal together, you got a Rubik's Cube. You put all the sides together, eureka, you win, right? So,
mhm,
Jen,
mhm.
I'm sorry I spoke over you. Please tell me again what you were.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, no, the electoral college is a huge problem because, like Roseanne was saying, you have these small states who have very low populations deciding what's right for cities like Chicago, who have over 10 million people. And so there's a huge problem with that. And unfortunately, like, states like Colorado or California, who provide so many millions of dollars in taxes that they don't typically even see are usually used for those states that are conservative. There's just such a huge injustice and inequality now that, for example, Medicaid's basically being cut with this new tax bill. And newsflash, people, a lot of people who receive Medicaid are a lot of rural areas. That means hospitals are
Red
closing,
states.
clinics, yeah, red states.
Yep.
And they voted against their own best interests.
What they always
Unfortunately,
do.
yeah, Trump's administration really spoke, like you said before, about speaks very like you said, like a fourth grade level,
Yep.
so that people relate, so that they're relatable to them,
They're
and
all
they don't
malleable
feel.
to their four walls of their existence. And if you happen to be white and you happen to be in a white Christo church and you happen to have information that you're going to go to heaven with all the people that are like you, and oh yeah, don't worry about the priest raping you. Be quiet. That's the conformity of this whole MAGA universe, right? That's
Right.
fascism. That's what they did in Nazi Germany. That's what they did in Italy. And then it works until it doesn't. It works until millions of people go, fuck this shit. We're not fucking hold on to your thumb, okay?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to
Right.
rip through the next part of this because thank you for agreeing that those are all common sense, because those are those are the four questions. Because if you can't wrap your head around the perversion of power, you can't see the forest for the trees, that we're not a democracy. And like I said earlier, and I will talk to any socialist. Again, I'm not anti-socialist. I'm anti-authoritarian first and foremost. If
Right.
again, I encourage anybody who wants to be socialist. I go out and create a brewery and get all your people and do your whole vertical and everything else, and everybody gets paid equally and everybody has an equal share. It works brilliantly. Those are called co-ops. You want to be that? That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't think about that without understanding we have socialism for the billionaire class that have broken the
Right.
rules. Now, let me tell you how they did it. Okay. So first of all, our first precept, okay, and you got to have a little historical bent here, but I'm just going to rip through these because I got to go, and I'm sure everybody else has got to go too. But first and foremost, we're going to recreate a modern day Glass-Steagall Act to separate commercial banking from investment banking while ensuring the full faith and credit of the United States cannot be used to guarantee global financial fraud and racketeering. So my question to you, Jen, what did you just hear me say?
Change the banking system so that it can't be used to siphon money and steal money without us knowing. There's actually like a link.
Beautiful. Now let me
Yeah.
ask you a follow-up question. Do you know how they do it,
Right now, how they do it?
or how they've done it the last 14 years?
I would say through nonprofits and also um, through businesses,
No,
public.
no,
No, okay.
no. So we have the way our financial system is built is we have a Federal Reserve, and they pretty much
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. Yeah.
including money supply and interest rates, and their mandate is to supposedly to keep inflation. It's arbitrary, but below 2%. It's just agreed upon, and then maximize employment. That's the idea of the Federal Reserve. Now, to your
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, just out of curiosity, this is a qualifying question for me. This isn't to try to embarrass you or put you on the spot.
No worries. No worries.
Not a lot of people, study this stuff. In fact, I didn't. I studied macroeconomics in college a long time ago, but I didn't get to know all the stuff I had to discover many years later. So,
Hmm.
in terms of the creation of the Federal Reserve, is the Federal Reserve independent?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, is that the way it was designed?
So I don't think so.
Okay, just a quick history lesson. The bottom line is that no, it's not independent, and nor was it ever supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be managed, quite frankly, by Congress. But let's think about this. There's a lot of complicated things that happen in the Federal Reserve. To me, the easiest analogy is if you've ever seen a movie that qualifies like NASA in Houston at Mission Control, you see all these engineers. There's like 300, 700 engineers that are working with their own specific spots of that rocket launch and how things are supposed to work, right? Think about that as like the Federal Reserve. It's the mechanics and the plumbing of our financial industry that if one thing goes wrong, another thing can fix it, and yada yada yada. And you've got thousands and thousands of technocrats that are PhDs and brilliant guys that come out in economics, and they're watching different factors of how things so that they can manage the economy, right? That's the way it's supposed to work. But it was always supposed to be managed, and it answers to Congress. Now think about this, for example. When you have somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or when you have, Mike Johnson, or you have any number of these Republican morons that we've seen from who's the guy that just got the pardon, Santos, right? He's just a lying
Yeah.
freaking moron who may as well. I mean, he fancies himself the talented Mr. Ripley, and the guy's an idiot beyond comprehension. But Donald Trump pardoned him. Okay, these guys are in Congress. Do you think they have an inclination of how A, Congress is supposed to work, and B, that how the Federal Reserve works?
No, they also don't even understand our basic, like our Constitution.
Right. So how do you think they're there? Why do you think they're there?
Oh, I think they're there because of a favor. I don't know. I think it's something to offer.
No, it's because billionaires found them and put them there because they speak the stupid language of these morons that are these MAGAs. And I'm not kidding. That's how they do
No,
it.
yeah. No,
So
I
they
agree.
find a way. They find ways to be able to, they pay the money, they get them in, and they tell them exactly what to do. That's our Congress, okay? So the bottom
Hmm.
line, coming back to number one, the reason why we had a Glass-Steagall Act in the first place, and what that means is we separated because after the Great Depression, we actually did the investigation that created the Great Depression. It was done by a gentleman that I emulate every single day who came from the same township that my friend Roseanne Rabbiola Mele's family came from in Sicily, in Italy, and his name was Ferdinand Pecora. And he was put into a position which was miraculous at the time because he didn't have access to all the information that we do now. And he figured out who was doing what, when, and how. He wasn't an expert in finance. He was an expert in scams, especially the mob, because he came from Sicily. He became an attorney. He goes into remind me, Tammany Hall, and he grows up. He comes up and he figures things out. And what they figured out was, okay, what the financial system was doing was a bunch of lying, deceiving, and stealing and cheating that created leverage ratios, that created the Great Depression, that created misery, where we had Hoovervilles and we had 20% unemployment that would ultimately lead to World War II. The whole globe came undone because of fraud that was taking place in the roaring 20s. Okay. And what they did was they said, we got to separate commercial banking from investment banking. Why? Because in the context of capitalism, commercial banking is what we all need so we don't put the money in our pillows, under our pillows, right? What we do is we need to be able to, pay our monthly fees, or excuse me, monthly bills. We need to be able to finance our cars and our houses and that sort of thing. And that's what commercial banking is supposed to do. And there's rules and regulations and everything else that are supposed to correspond with that. Then we have the investment banks. The investment banks are supposed to take big time capital. They're basically looking for opportunities for huge vertical paradigms to be able to create, I don't know, the next big thing, whether it's technology or whether it's energy or this, that, and the other. And that's the notion. And the notion is risk reward. That's really what capitalism is supposed to be. And what that means is if you come up and you get your degree from Harvard in economics and your PhD, and you come through and you do your analysis and you see, you're supposed to be able to have the capacity to understand, oh, these guys are doing good business that I want to invest in because I see an opportunity. And if you do right and you get it on the ground floor, well, then you make a ton of money and you live rich and happily ever after. Okay. But that's not what these guys do. What they actually do is they've created a monopoly through racketeering where they basically create all sorts of stuff in the shadow sector. And I don't want to go into all the details, but they're able to do that because we got rid of regulation. We deregulated the law that made what we call the 3Ds: deregulation, desupervision, and decriminalization. And if I say that in continuity, I'm just curious, for somebody with your sort of interest and background in criminology, what does that mean to you, Jen, if you have deregulation, desupervision, and decriminalization?
Decriminalization is, I would say, deregulation, or decriminalization would be more decriminalizing like petty offenses. Like, for example, here in Colorado, like getting rid of, marijuana being.
Okay, well, that's great. But see, what they did is they made corruption legal. They made huge corruption illegal. I mean, legal. Okay. What I'm telling you is when what happens, for example, when you take the cops off the beat?
Yeah, pretty much nothing, I would say.
A lot of people will start breaking the law. And then when everybody breaks the law, it's what we call Gresham's dynamic, which creates more and more lawbreakers, because who's going to hold them accountable? That becomes escape from New York kind of situation. So look, the baseline here is that after the aftermath of the great financial crisis, we had this song and dance where we saw Congress step in what they call TARP, which was the Troubled Assets Relief Program. They had to create liquidity because we supposedly had a liquidity crisis in our global markets, where because there was a meltdown in the housing industry, the way it was presented to the American people was that Congress had to come together to create emergency loans to be able to create liquidity in our financial system. They did a total of $700 billion. That blew people away at the time because they were like, moral hazard. We're giving guys who failed and did something that we don't know of, but they failed, and we're giving them money to sustain themselves. That's not capitalism. That's socialism for people that fuck shit up. That's what they did. Now, that was just the beginning. That wasn't even close to what we actually did. So to your point about deregulation, let's say you decriminalize, marijuana or somebody on the low rungs and everything else. Think about this. We provided, hold on to your hat. We provided in 2009, $33 trillion to the financial system that set the world up in a Ponzi scheme trap that was all based on deception and lies. Okay? So first of all, that's all illegal. Second of all, we gave them, again, $33 trillion in 2009. Were you aware of that?
Sorry, I keep muting myself. Yeah, I believe it.
Were you aware of it?
I I was aware of it, but not that dollar.
Okay, so
Not
what is
that
that? Just out of curiosity, do you know what our GDP is? The sum total of all goods and services in the United States?
right now. Is it like I think it's less than the number you just said. I think it's like gosh, what is it, like 1.7 trillion? Or is it 2
I think it's
point
27 trillion-ish.
yeah, it's like 27. Yeah.
It's less
Yeah.
than
So
the
it's
number
more.
I just told you. So let me, that's the sum total of everything in the United States. Okay, so that's like 370
It's
million.
insane. It's
So
yeah, it's
you know,
mind blowing.
you know how many people are in the financial industry out of curiosity?
No, it's probably a small number. I don't know. I don't know.
It's approximately, and I don't know how accurate this is, but I'm guessing it's somewhere in the 300,000 range.
Okay.
Okay, so
Wow.
do you know what the top 0.1% of that group of people is?
Um, is it just no, don't know.
How about the
Well, it's probably
billionaires? How
CEOs.
about the billionaires that control everything? So now
Well,
does it
yeah,
make sense? Now does it make sense? So let me tell you
yeah,
something. So Elon Musk, who's got $400 billion net worth
yeah,
right now, he's a pump and
yeah.
dump scam artist. Do you think during COVID that they sold more Teslas?
I don't think so.
He,
Did they?
he quadrupled his wealth during.
Wow. Yeah, right, right.
How do you think it
But wasn't
happened?
it through the Tesla situation?
Yeah, but how do you think it happened? You're starting to see the light. I could get into the details,
Yeah.
into the forensics, and all of those types of things, but
Oh, right. Yeah.
nobody's ever told you this, right?
No, and because like I said, so when I was studying, I realized, especially in psychology and criminology, and I was trying to bring the two together, forensic psychology, I'm like, why is there no research or profiling for white collar criminals when they contribute to the majority of the deficit of stolen goods and services and money and everything? I
Right.
didn't get it. I
So
was like,
no. So
what's
Bernie Sanders didn't tell you this. AOC didn't tell you this.
oh, yeah.
Elizabeth Warren didn't tell you this. Obama certainly didn't tell you this. Trump didn't tell you this. Did the New York Times tell you this? Nobody told you this, right?
No, no.
Who's,
Literally, I had to come to it myself.
who's telling you this? Besides yourself and your own friends, but who told you about $33 trillion in 2009?
You just did.
Okay, so who's on the billboard here?
Patrick Level presents.
Does anybody
Can't see.
want to question, like, I mean, look, anybody, if you have a PhD in masters in psychology or economics, please come challenge me. Please, please. I've got all the freaking answers, which means Roseanne has all the answers, which means everybody's on board. But I'm telling you right now, this is why we got to penetrate the bubble, to your point, in the Enlightenment, right? Because for
Mhm.
those who are lost in translation, they're like, look, I can't change anything. You can when you have the truth. So, for example,
Mhm.
if just very basic freaking common sense questions here. If you trusted me, right, Jen, and like, let's just say you knew, let's just put ourselves in some composite fictional TV show, right? And you realize that I've got this magic, I don't know, ability to see the future, right? And you've seen it, and it's been proven. You didn't trust it at first, but it's happened a million times. And you're like, I'm going to listen to what this guy Patrick says. And I tell you, for example, don't start your car. Somebody put a bomb in there that once you trigger it, it's going to blow up. Do you think you'd pay attention to me?
Yeah.
Okay. What about if I told you the plane was going to crash that you're about to get on? Would you trust me if you had already had, like 1,000 examples of now you completely trusted me, right?
Right.
Okay. So the fact is, tens of millions of people out there don't know my name. But the
Mhm.
bottom line is, I've got the $71 trillion truth. Now, the question is, you still have to go on a journey to figure out whether or not if there's any holes. And I welcome you to do so. And I will mentor you and I will walk you through everything. I've been on this journey for 14 years that took millions of dollars to get, that I dealt with the highest level people. Roseanne, tell them about the con briefly and how that affected you.
I muted myself. Look, when I saw the con, and I think, did I send you the link where you can watch all the episodes?
You
The
did.
You
con.
did. You sent it to
Okay.
me.
Now,
Yes.
so I'm watching episode 1 of the con, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden, because my mind is open, I have not closed my mind. I don't close my mind any day. Unless you tell me 1 and 1 equals 17, then you're full of shit. So I ain't gonna listen to you. All right. So I watch episode 1 of The Con. Boom. I was predisposed, and I tell him all the time, I was predisposed because I grew up with the corruption and the politics and the church and the machine and the businesses. Okay, I was predisposed to the corruption. So I saw the corruption as the top. I watched the con and I what do I get? I get the details. Right at that moment, I was like uh 69, 70 years old, and it hits me just like that. That's it. That's it. This is what I have to do. One episode. And I have this feeling you watch this one episode, and I think the light's going to go on because when you are open to the truth and you have the experience like I had, the experience and the learning like you have, it clicks. It
Mhm.
clicks. You understand it. So
Look,
the
I'll put it like this. Okay, so Jen, so you're already predisposed to this because of the way Roseanne was, because you worked, as you espoused at the beginning of this dialogue, in an environment, and you came from an environment where you saw injustices and it started to add up. Then you go
Mhm.
through life, and then later you circle back to education, you start asking questions, and then you start becoming cynical because you
Mhm.
understand the process. You understand you have to get the freaking evidence, which takes a
Mhm.
shit ton of time and resources, and if they're preventing you from seeing it, then you get, quashed, and you have to go with your instincts. So the bottom line is we did the work, we've got the work, we showed the work, but we only have half of what we actually have on the shelves, just so you know. Because I
Mhm.
ended up getting quashed by none other than BlackRock. Who's BlackRock? Do you know who BlackRock is?
Yeah, I do, but you can refresh our memories.
BlackRock is the largest asset manager on the planet. I think they've got somewhere north of $11 trillion in assets right now under management. They're by far the most important, powerful corporation on the planet. And they're basically the United States of America. Okay. And they're
So
that
that
way because of why everything I'm revealing. And there's a reason for that. Please, if you got a question,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to ask you a question. Yeah. So, did they try to sue you over the information? How they
No, it doesn't
squash
work
you?
that way. They have all the control. So they're the board of directors on everything from pharmaceuticals to energy to finance to all media. Okay. And
Hmm.
somebody got the word. So it's a long story. Basically, I've got if I want to litigate this one day, I will be happy to on behalf of people. But the bottom line is they don't have to sue somebody because then they're going to give me more exposure. They just have to basically rug pull it because they're on the board of directors of
I
Time
see.
Warner. We had an agent. We were represented from one of the top Hollywood agencies that took this on that was also, by the way, involved with Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah
Uh-huh.
Winfrey, as a billionaire, is loosely tied to this stuff, and there's some weirdness there. But the bottom line is what I'm about to tell you right now is really why, in my speculation, and I don't have the evidence that they quash us. I only have what's the word I'm looking for? Anecdotal evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just based on a lot of things that we're in the midst of because we're at the highest levels. And by the way, I used to work at Warner Brothers and Paramount, and I've been around top level executives and CEOs and all sorts of shit. So,
Mm-hmm.
if it smells like shit, looks like shit, like the great, comedians of the 70s, Cheech and Chong said, it's shit, and that's kind of the deal. But the most important part is this. So when you go back to recreate a modern day Glass-Steagall Act, so we had separation of these systems, which then deregulation enabled them to gamble with other people's money. That created a $4.5 trillion housing bubble, which is the kind that led to a $900 trillion global calamity because of derivatives and collateralized debt obligations and all manner shape of what we call financial engineering and innovation that only people who know how to lie, steal, and cheat at very high levels understand, which is basically the symmetry of the movie The Big Short, but they only got on first base. They didn't even have an understanding of really what the whole thing was about. Although they do say, for those of you who love The Big Short, the last 5 minutes, they basically laid out exactly what we did with the con, quite frankly. So we answered all the questions that they prognosticated at the end of The Big Short. Long and the short of it is, when this $33 trillion madness happened in 2009, illegally because of the Federal Reserve and what we did, guess who managed the money?
I don't know. I would probably, yeah, BlackRock.
And what
well, that makes sense.
Yes, there you go. Eureka. And what did they do? They picked and chose winners and losers. Is that capitalism? For those of you out there going, yeah, but it's fucking capitalism. Not if they picked.
No, that's corruption.
Winners,
that's a conflict of interest.
It's racketeering. It's not rocket science. It's racketeering. So now I'll move on. So does that all start to make sense? If you put all the money in the hands of the few criminals and they have complete control, now does the world look pretty clear to you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yes.
We say follow the money.
Yes.
We follow the money to the ends of the universe and back. And I say 71 trillion because we did 33 trillion in 2009. We did from about 2012 to 2016-ish, but even though it bled more, there was an operation called quantitative easing. I know all the details of that if you want to challenge me on that. And that enabled another 16 trillion. Plus in 2019, we created, because there was a repo run before, and repo is overnight lending, we created another 19 trillion that nobody understands that came out of this emanation of Japan, or SoftBank in Japan, that roiled global markets, very similar to what happened in 2008. But the media doesn't tell the story because the media doesn't know anything about this. They don't have a clue. So that's $71 trillion before COVID. And there was more after COVID. And by the way, for those of you tracking, yes, Obama is the fault of all of this because it happened on his watch and he let Wall Street get away with it, which it created everything we're in the midst of. But the illegal use of Federal Reserve Act 13.3 has been happening for 3 administrations. It happened during the Trump administration in 2017, 2018, 2019. And then ultimately it happened again during the Biden administration. You guys might remember we had a run on banks like Silicon Valley Bank and Public Bank. And that was all because of interest rate swaps and ultimately because of crypto and Bitcoin and some other bullshit. But one of the key players was none other than Peter Thiel. You know who Peter Thiel is, right? Jen?
Yes. Peter, what's that? Oh, was it Palantir?
That's right. Peter Thiel is the guy up everybody's ass because of what they can do with all of this technology. That was also involved very much with Gaza, by the way, as kind of a test run, which I think is coming to the United States if we don't get a hold of this. And then ultimately, that guy got bailed out, a billionaire who his bank was involved with interest rate swaps that created a run that Biden came up and backstopped. Okay. So both parties are in on it, is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay.
Well, yeah, there's no good side or bad. They're both equally engrossed in it.
So this is what Bernie Sanders and AOC says is precept number 2. And I'm going to rip through these really fast. End Citizens United. Legalize corruption by dark money must end. Any questions or problems with that? Or does that make sense to you? Okay. Right. Well, we could talk about it because what happens is all of the stolen money goes into the best ROI, which is to get people in Congress. And by the way, I will say this. Marjorie Taylor Greene went into Congress with $700,000. She just announced her retirement. She's worth $27 million. Yeah. How's that for a little bit of upside?
Yeah, especially since they don't really make that much money.
They make about $160,000.
Yeah.
You know that Donald Trump has looted over $5 billion. Do you know how much the president gets paid?
Oh, it's like $500,000 a year.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's looted $5 billion in proceeds from the beginning of his. That's in a year.
So it's corruption. It's corruption.
Is it good to be the king, like Mel Brooks once said? Anybody remember the movie The History of the World? It's good to be the king. Yeah. Okay, come on. It's all a joke, right? So the bottom line is on 3. This is the most important of them all. I just demonstrated to you that we had $71 trillion go to roughly 300,000 people, and a lion's share to probably out of that, maybe less than 200 people, right? And we're talking 71 trillion over the course of that amount of time. That explains why we have the billionaires. So the question is, if you believe, it's not even a question, it's the statement, right? If you want Medicare for all, if you want, cities to be able to operate the way Zoran Mondani is talking about in New York, if you want shall we say, better education and a reboot on all critical thinking, if you want, science or renewable energy or any other thing I'm talking about, systemic racism in prison, where are we going to find the money, Jen?
It's there.
Take it back from those billionaires. That's all I have to say. They
That's
pay
part
their
of it.
fair share.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's part of it. And the way you do
Taxes
there,
too.
there are clawbacks. Okay, if you get people like, for example, Jamie Dimon is now being investigated by Trump because of Epstein, because they were they were involved with Epstein in doing all sorts of shit that Trump was involved with. So whatever there. But my
Yeah.
point is that and I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on racketeering, but there shouldn't be, even though there's all sorts of slippery slopes with the way that if we take over the law, or excuse me, the government, can we recreate kind of what we just saw Project 2025 do with executive orders? Oh, yeah, we
Oh
can.
yeah.
So
Oh
my
yeah.
point is we got to have a tidal wave resurgence of people getting hip to the truth, because look, a dynamism and all of this stuff can be floated by the currency, which is different than taxation because of the nature of monetary, and I should say fiscal policy, which is primarily the stuff, because government has the power. Sorry, Congress has the power of the purse. Congress
Right.
can do whatever it wants. It wants to wage war. It wants to do this, that, and the other. Congress can do whatever we want. We've got a fiat currency. The only thing that supplants inflation is productive capacity. So if you have more people making more money, quite frankly, there might be some inflation, but not if the law is the way it is. Not any more so than you have billionaires basically raping everybody and getting free money from the Federal Reserve. I mean, that should be inflation times 10. And I, quite frankly, don't know. I take it back. Have you ever seen real estate prices over the course of the last 10 years where you live?
Yeah. Well, I've looked up the inflation of just like in general of things over the last like what, 50 years?
Right. But real estate in particular, you can look at and go, look,
Yes, yes.
real
Yeah,
estate
I haven't,
high,
yeah.
and part and parcel to everything we do, but it's because we're giving the people with the money free money that they're putting into real estate to basically create higher prices, and that has nothing to do with free market. That has everything to do with monopolization. So again, clarity on
Hmm.
that. But moving forward, so my point is we can recreate our energy paradigm, which can create tens of millions of jobs. We can recreate the middle class. We can do a jobs project where people can find where they want to be productive in society. Can we create social safety nets for those who fall through the cracks? You bet your ass. Can we, reinvigorate our exploration programs and so forth? You bet your ass. This is the greatest opportunity in the history
No,
of
yeah.
the world. And what did
Yeah.
Donald Trump just do? He waged war on renewables. So all we got to do is just turn the tables on this jackass and then basically tackle corruption and the perversion of power through the next four precepts, where we're going to expand SCOTUS to 13 judges to get overcome the Roberts Court and this backdoor of corruption. And then we're going to hold the justices to account. We're going to end qualified immunity. We're going to end the Electoral College, and we're going to institute term limits for U.S. senators and representatives. Because when you've got static people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy and everybody else, what are they going to ultimately do? They're going to work for the machine that put them there. They're not going to work for the American people. We need new blood. We need new blood. We need people who get it. We need people to get inside, and then they got to get out. They can't make a career. I don't think anybody in the Continental Congress ever foresaw somebody staying in power as long as they did. In fact, I know they didn't. And then ultimately, the final precept is prohibit all insider trading from members of the Senate, House of Representatives, the Supreme Court, administration, and cabinet members. You can't use insider trading based on what Congress is funding. You can't invest in military industrial. You can't do this and that and become rich like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because if you're working for the machine, why are you there? To lie to the American people. So that's the clean new deal, my friend. Jen, do you see anything that you disagree with?
My mouse is being funny. Um, no, not at all. It's exactly what, we need to do to make it happen. I think all of these touch on the reason why we've become so infested with um, corruption.
What do you think? What do you think would happen if like you were able to personally, you know, share the truth with hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and then they shared the truth with thousands of more to hundreds of the millions? Do you think if tens of millions of us knew all of this detail, that we would be able to turn the tables on the system pissing on our head, telling us it's rain?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, right now I'm working with community change, Chicago or Colorado, to help with like building grassroots up and just kind of getting knocking on doors, talking to people, mobilizing to make changes in our legislature, and then also those who we elect to make sure. Yeah. So I mean, I I believe so. And I think it's easier too on a platform that's able for people to like that people are able to see like online and that kind of idea,
Is
because if
there
they don't have
anything?
time.
Is there anything I said again? And I know you already said no, but I want to hear you say it again. Is there anything I said? Well, let's go. The first question: is there anything I said that you disagree with?
um no, no, I don't think so. No.
Did you learn a few things in this discussion that you didn't know before?
Yes, I did,
What was the
especially about the
primary thing?
amount.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think the well, the how the banks, for example, kind of steal
The
allow
best way, okay, the best way to rob a bank is to own one.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
By the way,
So
our
Yeah.
when
mentor,
you
my mentor, wrote that book because of what happened in the savings and loan crisis that taught us all this stuff that happened in the 70s and the 80s. This is all the same continuity that's been going on for 40 years. So the question
Hmm.
that you have to so I want you to say this out loud, okay? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want you to feel it. If you feel inspired and compelled to say this, if you were talking to somebody that was like, God, I don't know what we do about this. What's the
Right.
first thing that you can say from your heart?
I honestly, well, I would provide them with some of the things I've researched, but also too, I would send them to your website that
Could
has
you,
it
could
all
you
laid
say
out.
could you say the whole thing is corrupt?
The whole thing is corrupt? Absolutely.
Can you
Yeah.
say that there are ways to turn the table on corruption, and we know what the answers are?
Yes, I
Can you
believe
say,
so.
can you say that with commitment, and can you feel yourself in your? So the question is again, I got it. We already established this, but I want to finish with this. So
Hmm.
again, if you trust me, right? Let's just say you go
Hmm.
through this whole thing and you're like, holy shit, I watched the con and like Roseanne Rabiel Amelia. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy has the fucking answers that nobody in the country is telling me, and everybody needs to understand because it's like getting in your car that's about to blow up. I know who
Hmm.
did what, when, and how that's going to sabotage your engine. I know exactly how these billionaires have put this transactional pig pedo con artist in control of the MAGA zombie apocalypse. And I know exactly, like it's a horror movie, how to freaking press one button and get rid of all of the threat that's destroying the world so that we can all live in peace, harmony, and happiness and everything else. The bottom line is we know that nothing is ever perfect, but do we accept allowing insanity to control us, especially in a nation where the United States has spent 248 years being able to get us to a point where we should be able to figure all this shit out?
Hmm. Right, right. Right. We should, but unfortunately, people have gone astray. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm a little zoned out here, but yeah, no,
No, no,
I,
no, you got it. You got it. So here's the bottom thing. We are better for the time spent with you because you've given us an opportunity and a window into how other people are seeing things and everything else. And I'll tell you, the thing that I've learned from watching you is you're on the
hmm
right path. You got
hmm
great instincts. You're somebody who can deliver incredible, shall we say, we all want to have value in a very meaningful way. There's a place in here for you to not only help us spread the word, but to be a cog in the wheel to be able to develop this scenario to where we
absolutely.
tackle corruption. Because without tackling the corruption and understanding our system, nobody can fix the problem. We are the black box
Right,
of what
right.
everybody doesn't understand. And so I would thank you for your time, but more importantly, encourage you to help spread the word. We're always available.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And
Um,
anything you want in terms of don't hesitate to ask. I'm always here as somebody who wants to work with anybody who wants to work towards the truth.
yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate what both you and Roseanne are doing and fighting for every day.
we're the good fixers. We're the
Yes.
good fixers. Okay.
May
That's
the truth
all.
May the truth prevail.
You're a good fixer. That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll
Yeah.
close this like I close most of my truth bombs. This is probably the first time that you've ever heard this, but I just say to the American people, when you, me, and everyone you see that isn't a Nazi, that believes in decency and beauty and integrity and sustainability and liberty and justice for all, when we merge in unity and carry the clean new deal, we will destroy the misery of tyranny and unleash the renaissance of possibility. All you have to do is become a nuclear reaction vector to the Big Bang of truth to force light into the heart of darkness. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Onwards and upwards, my friends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everybody
Bye,
tuning in.
guys.
We look forward to your comments below. All the best.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.